Hello, and welcome to the Film Gamer Podcast, episode number 27 overall. This is season 3, episode 20. And in this week's episode, we are going to look at the top 50 Letterboxd Best Picture ranking of my own, along with videos on YouTube about last week's episode. Talk about Joe Rogan a bit, Taylor Swift Eras review, and I wanted to give an update about the Eclipse because I didn't really get into it. But first, I'll get to this weekend's box office, which just so happened to be Civil War, the A24 film, number one again, with a 56% drop. I'm told that that's actually pretty good for something that, I guess is divisive or particularly an independent film, so it's running pretty well. It has 44 million. It costs 50 million overall, and it's on its way. It's in the number 5 highest grossing A24 movie of all time. Of course, Everything Everywhere All at Once, the Best Picture winner, is number 1, and then number 2 is Uncut Gems at about 50 million. And then there's, a few more in there like Talk to Me and whatnot. But Civil War will at least be number 2, and good for it, I guess. I asked my dad today if he wanted to go see it on Tuesday, and we will, so why not? I got in an argument with this guy on Twitter. Not an argument per se, just like a discussion, I swear, on the movie Abigail. This is a new movie from the directors. Their name is Radio Silence, is what they go by, and they previously directed the films Ready or Not, Scream from 2022, and Scream 6, which I don't like. But Scream 5 I really did like. Anyways, he's a horror hound, and he wanted Abigail to be number 1 because he thought that maybe, two original number 1 movies back to back. So wouldn't it be great if Abigail was number 1? And I say no, because A24's most expensive film is Civil War. It costs about $50 million. I'd rather a decently well-reviewed $50 million movie be number 1 than like a $30 million horror movie. This guy seems to think that horror is like endangered and that we need to prove people wrong of like, see, horror is doing well because, the first Omen underperformed, and this quarter, I guess, if you measure horror by the quarter, hasn't done as well as, like, Five Nights at Freddy's was the last big horror hit. So I think, who cares? Horror has always been profitable. It's always on the low end. It's the high end horror that we need. Abigail looks like a movie that, like, it was shot in a house. It could have been done for $5 million. It could have been done on many levels, and it's great that it was, getting a theatrical release by a major movie studio, and I'm sure it's entertaining. It's in the 80s on Rotten Tomatoes. But do I care if it was number 1 at the box office? No, and neither do most people. So moving on, you have Godzilla x Kong. This movie, I'm amazed, has done as well as it has, because it looked like just another Godzilla v Kong, which granted we don't get in a while, but I thought the first one was great. Didn't really need another, didn't really lend itself to a sequel. How do you top it? In this one, Kong has kind of like a mechanical arm, and they fight the Scar King, which is another ape, but that's not like a crazy, Mecha Godzilla style threat like in the first one. But nonetheless, audiences didn't care. The people who turned out last time, it was during COVID, the first kind of major movie that came out post-COVID, I would say, and it was a year after it came out, and it made 30 million and nearly 50 million over 5 days. It was a big hit, but now COVID, as we know it, is like subsided in a non-issue. So this was able to open at full strength, and it's outgrossed the Kong movie, and it has made 171 million. So it's doing pretty well for the MonsterVerse. It will not probably outgross Godzilla domestically. As for Godzilla 2014, the Gareth Edwards movie, how it will do worldwide, because remember that movie made an impression. Like, it was so big that they greenlit the sequel and kickstarted the whole MonsterVerse. That made about 524 million. This one's improving even on the last Godzilla versus Kong, which did about 470. And I think, as I said, it's done about what, 471. Now it's at 485. So, yeah, pretty good for an 80 million opening. It's doing well, better than I expected. I'll watch it, when it comes out on Crave, I suppose. But, anyways, number four is Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, which by Lionsgate Films, I'm going to be honest, I thought that this movie was going to be straight to streaming on Amazon or something. And maybe it is in other foreign territories or something. It seems that way. This movie cost 60 million, which people say, oh, that's, too much, or it's a bad sign when a movie costs this much and doesn't do it. Listen, ever since, as far as I know, the DVD market crashed, and people thought like, oh, they movies can't make their money back if they bomb theatrically, so there's less risks. You see, it started with the movie The Northman, where that movie cost like 80 million, but the way that it was structured, it did really well on VOD, and Universal got their money back. And that's what it seems like Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare is going to be like. Pick up a few bones. They barely put any into advertising it, or maybe they have a heavy digital spend, which is cheaper than, getting a giant billboard in LA and that kind of thing. So what they do is spend very little. They get the prestige of it being a theatrical release, which people care about and notice, because people go and they like see it listed. That's all they do. They see it listed. Maybe they see a commercial, and maybe they hear the odd cousin or friend or person who goes to the movies every week and see, oh, hey, I saw that movie. It was good, or we enjoyed it. Those coworker movies, as they say, and people see it, and then you hear about it, but it's like you don't really intend to go see it, and then it shows up 2 weeks later on PVOD. Whoa, it's in my living room now. It was in theaters, and now it's in my living room. And it's $24.99. Am I going to pay for it? No, but that's like interesting. You see it listed, and then a month or two later, you see it listed again on VOD, $6.95, and you go, "Oh, okay. I've been looking forward to this. Do I really want to see it?" You watch the trailer again. I don't know. I'll wait till streaming. That's on Amazon Prime. Then you definitely see it. Because it's like in your mind free. Even though you or somebody is paying for Amazon Prime. At the end of the day, somebody gets paid. It's good that they structured it that way. Then we have Spy X Family Code: White, which is a Crunchyroll anime movie. Crunchyroll is now owned by Sony, so like that's just a weird anime title. These animes always have the weirdest titles. I mean, I don't know what to say. But hey, it's doing well. Hyper niche, collects some money. Good for them. I'm sure people enjoy it. I'm sure it has its fans. Kung Fu Panda 4, doing well. Why? Because there's no kids' movies playing. It's kind of weird. It's kind of weird. There used to be kids' movies frequently. Even if they weren't animated, there was like those live action movies about 8-year-olds or 12-year-olds or coming of age. Now every coming of age movie is like a belated adult coming of age movie of people coming of age like at my age, or people in their later 30s or 40s. I mean, I just saw Beau is Afraid, and I'll get to that. But yeah, gone are the like Max Keeble's Big Move, which granted that movie is terrible, but like movies where kids kind of see themselves, you know. Now it's all like completely animated, and it's, I guess I feel fortunate that I was like satiated with those kinds of movies growing up. But you kind of have to deal with Ghostbusters: Frozen Empire, as sort of a kids movie, which has held well, crossed 100 million. It is the lowest grossing Ghostbusters movie though, so I'm not sure how Sony feels about that. Maybe they'll do well on PVOD and with their streaming deal, where it goes to Disney and then it goes to Netflix. so they get paid well and they don't have to shoulder the budget of running a streaming service, which a lot of other studios made the mistake of doing. Sony, of course, I mean, they do have Crunchyroll, and they also have, um, they did have Crackle, and they sold it um, for a while because they decided to get out of it. And apparently, they have a lot of money left over from their merger in India with their television division. That it got swatted down, so they didn't end up using it. So now the rumor is they're gonna co-run with Apollo Management, which is a private equity firm, Paramount, which would be a nightmare because it would mean less major movie studios. You look at 20th Century Fox, who made 36 movies in theaters, and then after they were bought by Disney, they released three. So, less movies is always a bad thing. Um, Dune Part 2, 276 million. Wow, this is, you know, even above my expectations, which were pretty tepid, even though I was looking forward to it. I wasn't sure how much more it would perform. But people are really into it. That's good. It's made at a high level, has a reasonable craft to it. I'm going to wait until the third movie because both the first one and this one, part two, feel a bit empty. Like, there's, it's missing a soul, I guess. It feels very methodical. But, like, yeah, nearing about 700 million worldwide, huge number. I mean, for context, that's more than Ready Player One did. It's more than Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol did, um, and it's approaching like Fast and Furious level territory. So, I mean, good for big movies that are done decently. And you have Monkey Man. This is its third week, 20 million. Hey, like, what do you expect? It's Universal paid about 10 million for it. It was made independently before that. Jordan Peele came in and said, "Hey, we need to release this movie. I'm going to use my first look deal with Universal to release it." And there you go. It's picked up some money. And then my brother saw it, and people really like it. To me, the way the action is filmed seems a bit low rent, like kind of that the Raid style poor man's where there's no like reference. I don't like the shaky cam documentary in your face kind of action where you're like standing shoulder to shoulder with two other guys having a fist fight. I don't like that style of action. It feels kind of hacky. It feels too showy to me. I want to be immersed in action. I want to see it like from afar, but also seeing the characters' heads, and that's why I don't like the kind of cheap style. But it's it's good for thrills and people like it. So yeah. And then The Omen crashing 50% again. Now, it has some international appeal and it has made more money than Immaculate, even though it's more 30 million, and the reviews are great. Everybody's saying it's great. So 45 million worldwide. It'll do well on Disney Plus, which I'm happy for because I got Disney Plus for the year. So, I mean, has it done well in theaters? No. It's in fact underperformed because, as I said before, Disney doesn't know how to market horror movies. They should have kept the Fox marketing division, but it is structured in a way that it will make a profit um, on video on demand or streaming or so. Um, Shrek 2 got a release. That's kind of odd. And then there's something listed here called The Long Game, which is about in 1955, five young Mexican caddies, out of love of the game, were determined to learn how to play, so they created their own golf course in the middle of the South Texas desert. That's an interesting premise, you know. I've never heard of this film at all, which, is rare. How did it get past me? You know, I should know better. But, the long game, referring to people, in their driving. Um, so this is 1 hour and 26 minutes, but according to a movie with the same title, starring Jackie Earle Haley, that can't be right. It's got to be the other one. This one's from like 2023. It stars Dennis Quaid. There we go. 1 hour 52 minutes, 79% on Rotten Tomatoes. Okay, so it's found an audience somewhere, maybe Hispanics or something. Um, but I'll just read Armand White. Oh, I love this critic. Um, Funny enough, I came to this critic from Donkey, Video Game Donkey, a YouTuber who does, video games, and he talks about critics and movie critics, which is funny to hear from most video game critics talking about movies get it wrong or are dumb, but Donkey has good perspective, and his hilarious summary of Armand White is that he's a black man who said, fuck that, I'm gonna be white just to piss people off. Black is white, if something is terrible, he loves it, like Suicide Squad or something. If something is great, he hates it. So, yeah, I find it funny. There's a Criterion essay that he did. I think it's on Do the Right Thing or something. So I just kind of find it funny. People say he's kind of like a far right troll, but as far as critics goes, he's harmless because you don't have to, watch him on TV. Like, um, there's this one local Detroit critic who I'm just like annoyed because I disagree with him all the time. And I thought the same with Michael Phillips and A.O. Scott when they took over at the movies from Roger Ebert and Richard Roper. They should have kept Richard Roper and had Roper be the new Ebert, but it was mismanaged. I digress. Anyway, Armand White says about The Long Game, directed and co-written by Julio Quintana. The Long Game exploits easy sentimentality to gain political advantage. Armand is always looking at things under a political lens, which even like, my brother tells me every movie is political. Even to not be political is political and a choice. So it's kind of fascinating, especially in these times to, gather movies politically. But, have a heart, Armand. Maybe this movie is enjoyable, but then again, it stars Dennis Quaid, who is almost never in a good movie. So, yeah, I mean, makes sense to me. Um, but Jay Hernandez is in it. Jay Hernandez, who is in Suicide Squad, by the way, as the flamer guy, who I like. He has heart. He's good. He's good in that movie. He's an actor you kind of see around. He's in the first Hostel movie. He played Magnum PI. In the remake series. So, good for him. He's one of those people, it's like, I see him, I'm rooting for him. So, good that this movie found an audience. I am pleased. I have nothing to do with it at all. Will I ever watch it? Probably not. But hey, it made 2 million, 2.3 million. That's a good start for a movie that I've never heard of. The distributor isn't even listed on Box Office Mojo, which, granted, Box Office Mojo has gone downhill. They didn't even update their box office list until way in the afternoon, which is hours after Rivals. It's run completely by computers on autopilot now, so that's why the website sucks. But I still need to use it because the other ones aren't up to snuff. So yeah, it's not surprising that it's missing that information. But moving on, Arthur the King, still playing in about 700 theaters. This is week 6. Lionsgate didn't spend a whole lot on the money, but 500,000, 24 million total. I saw the previous movie that this guy Simon, who must be a buddy of Mark Wahlberg, I can't recall his last name. Anyway, he directed it. This is his sophomore feature, and 30 million worldwide. It was well reviewed, um, and yeah, I'm actually looking forward to seeing it because it's about Mark Wahlberg, who does like an Iron Man through the forest with Simu Liu, and a dog follows them and helps them find their way. Terrible title, as I said, but again, I'm looking forward to it. Will I get it on PVOD? No. Will I get it on VOD? Probably not, but I will get it on streaming, when it comes to Amazon. Yeah, 69%. It's gone down a bit. Of course, you know, the fan reaction is 97%. Gosh, the way Rotten Tomatoes organizes their consensus now, where it's like they show the review and then instead of the plot, it's like buy tickets. And then they show the plot instead of the consensus. Just scroll way down at where it says it's hard to deny Arthur the King's ability to tug at the heartstrings, although it may have been more effective if it had taken a subtler approach. People don't know subtle. I mean, it's very rare. Like, the smallest amount of subtlety in movies now is so heavily applauded that it's, movies are like sledgehammers because it's about what can you show on a clip, what can you show on YouTube, social media that people will respond to, and that's like the great scene. That's what I feel like it's like. But yeah, it's about respecting your audience, asking, will they get it? The fans, by the way, of this movie say Arthur the King is a feel good movie with enough excitement and heartwarming drama to entertain the whole family. So there you go. Imaginary people with families that I'm talking to. Like, when people review movies and they're like, fun for the whole family, it's like, occasionally back in the day, my dad would rent something on VHS and we'd watch that, but doesn't it feel like it's over now? Like, I feel like everybody, it's so weird, the intergeneration where there's a family out there now who has like a teenager and a 12-year-old and an 8-year-old, and it's like, who are those people? Everybody I know now, they have, they're either single, they're married with no kids, or they have two or three like really young kids, or maybe they have a few 5-year-olds. Yeah, so when people say fun for the whole family, maybe that's why not a whole lot of family films are made, or they're straight to um, you know Disney Plus. If I am to guess, I will say by the time that, if it ever happens, which it will, I'm optimistic. I find somebody and I get married and I have kids and I have a family. That's when they'll start making, family pictures because it's on my time. Anyways, I'm getting deep into the, Sasquatch Sunset by Bleecker Street. They never have like really high grossers. ISS, I'm pretty sure, was their highest grossing movie, which was an opening movie. Because nothing was opening on that date. This was in January, and it's just basically the International Space Station. World War III breaks out, and the Russian astronauts and the American astronauts have to fight each other. Looked watchable to me, but anyways, they don't release very big movies, so I wouldn't be surprised if you haven't heard about it. This movie is about Jesse Eisenberg and Riley Keough, played at Sundance, and they're in full Sasquatch makeup the whole time, and it's you know it's funny to me because it's like one of those movies of like, wow, somebody wanted to write a script about this. Like, you ever watch something and it's so cute and it's like, how did somebody spend like a year and a half making this movie? And then, for them to make it, and it's gets well reviewed in the sense that it has a 70%, 72% critic score, 38% audience score, which means it's probably hard to watch. Um, for the critics' consensus, for audiences attuned to Zellner's utterly unique wavelength, Sasquatch Sunset offers a moving, if often inscrutable, look at our relationship with the natural world. Okay, who is attuned to this guy's wavelength? I've never heard of this guy, but the way that he is presented, David Zellner, um, like, I've never heard of this guy, so like, I guess he's big in some stuff. He made a movie called Damsel, which is that the one I'm thinking of? Not the one that just came out on Netflix, but it's a movie. No, I'm thinking of Take Me. This movie, yes, Robert Pattinson, Mia uh, Wasikowska movie from 2018 about a pioneer who ventures across the American frontier to marry the love of his life. And, she gets into some stuff. Watch it. Me describing the plot now won't really do it justice. It's a Robert Pattinson, Mia Wasikowska kind of comedic uh, drama, which now I'm starting to get the tuning of his wavelength. But yeah, it's it's weird how a lot of the reviews and critic reviews speak of these filmmakers like Nia DaCosta, who, as if they're a known entity. Nia DaCosta made a movie called Little Woods in 2018, and then people kind of spoke about her like she was already an entity. And that was before she made Candyman, because before Candyman came out, she was already announced as the director of The Marvels. And now that all of them came out, you know what happened with The Marvels? I watched it this week. and it is not good. Like, I didn't finish it. This is a Marvel movie. Hit after hit after hit after hit. 32 movies in a row. All hits. This movie, well, not all hits. Some of them, like The Eternals, that's not a good movie. But people were like, it's 2021, it's COVID, whatever. Um, oh, he also did Kamiko the Treasure Hunter, this Zellner guy. Yeah, that was a movie that came out, of course, while I was in university in 2014. And it was, yeah, a movie. My buddy Devin showed it to Devin. He's been on one of my podcasts before. It's about a woman who looked for a lost VHS tape of Fargo and froze to death. Highly rated movie. Yeah, starring Rinko Kikuchi, who stars on that Jake Adelstein reporter show Tokyo Vice, which was on HBO, by the way. Okay, movie, or sorry, TV show, was originally going to be a movie with Daniel Radcliffe in like the 90s or 2000s, ends up being like a Michael Mann produced project. Um, and a TV show. It does 2 seasons. I doubt it will get a third because the second one was so boring. I ended up catching the finale after only watching the first 3 episodes because they kind of do this plot turn of like, Jake, there are a lot of stories, but like to be continued on the main thread because of jail time, or like it felt like it was spinning its wheels. So I'm like, I'm out. You know, I'm a main quest line guy. I played Skyrim. I played it for like 6 hours. People would say that's not enough. Hey, that's how long the main quest takes. Okay? So I played Skyrim. I played the main quest. Maybe I did 1 or 2 side quests. People will find that blasphemous because the story of Skyrim is garbage. Like a lot of Bethesda games, the story is not great. Um, but hey, I play the main quest line. I don't dawdle around, um, except when I go on wild tangents to the point where I'm barely even sure what I was talking about. Why was I even bringing up Tokyo Vice? You know, that's kind of crazy, that digression. Play back the tape and we'll find out. Anyway, um, good for this guy. He already has a brand. That's my point. Um, anyways, I think I've covered enough of it. They tried releasing the Bob Marley movie in 1,000 theaters again to try and get it over 100 million. It's not going to happen because, like I said with the Marvel movie, that's what I was talking about. Um, one day, about 3 days ago, I watched the Bob Marley movie because it's like, oh, my Paramount Plus is running out. I better watch this. It was a hit in theaters. I'll watch it. I got 20 minutes in. There's no plot. There's no story. It's just this happened and then this happened and then this happened. And then they talk in that kind of reggae Jamaican way, but it's actors kind of doing an impression of that. So it feels weird. And then they don't have subtitles because they're speaking like this kind of French, Cajun, Jamaican English, and you can't really understand what they're saying. And it's like a bunch of British actors and American actors trying to do Jamaican accents, and you kind of go with it because they're all representative, like they're all black, but it doesn't come across naturally, and I'm just like, okay, why are we listening to this? Like, it's just like a stoner movie, I guess, but the vibes are too harsh, like it's a bit too serious. Why don't we have a Bob Marley movie where he's just jamming? Like they tried to make Bob Marley into this like idol figure, which I hate. Like I hate it when they, unless it's like really takes on mythic qualities, but like it's like here's a biopic about how much of a genius somebody was that was once in a lifetime, and it's like people aren't like that. They have stories behind them. Um, but yeah, that's probably why they released this and it didn't hit because it was on hit because it was on because it was already on Paramount Plus. So why go to the theater? You know, distributors don't get that, or maybe theaters just take what they can get, or and the studios are clueless all the same. But I watched the Bob Marley movie, sucked, turned it off after 40 minutes. And then I tried watching Wish, and I got 15 minutes into that. That was another movie by Disney that bombed. Their animated movie couldn't watch it. And then I'm like, okay, the Marvels. I'll watch this. Get 20 minutes in, no reason to care. And as a movie person, watching and stopping 3 movies in a row sucks. Like, I want to get through a movie. But, and in particular, these are all major movies. Like, Bob Marley was released by Paramount Pictures. Wish and Captain Marvel were released by Disney. They were like big movies, and they all suck. So you're like, okay, back in the day when a movie was bad, they were still bad but coherent. Like, they skipped all the story steps, but they, you know, had, maybe the acting was bad or maybe the plot logic was out the window, but, the movie still had like a score. It was still properly sound mixed. There was still a decent setting and production design. Now you don't have that. But yeah, that's it for, you know, most of the movies. There are no major milestones at the box office. It's a boring weekend, and the one guy who I follow on Twitter, ERC Exhibitor Relations Company, he's like, IP, because intellectual property, by the way. He doesn't have some kind of fetish, but he's like, people say they want original movies and then show up to original movies. So people want sequels, and it's like, okay, that is a broken brain way of thinking. I don't know if this guy has had a stroke, but like, people don't think, oh, I'm going to see this movie because it's based on an existing property. No, people go see a movie because it looks good. And it's just, there was no high end movie. Like, Civil War opened last weekend to 25 million. That's a good number. That's not based on anything. That's an original movie. But people act like it's hard to make original movies. No, we just want good movies. And the reason we don't get them is because everybody who's the head of a movie studio now comes from the branding and TV side of making movies. So they're used to, like, oh, we want higher profits. How do we ensure higher profits? Well, we just make franchises. And then, post Batman Begins, everybody's like, well, we can do a reboot. We can make it grittier because that's an idea to make it like harder to see or tougher, even though it should be softer. You know, the movie executives are stupid. That's why, and they don't come organically from movies. In the 70s, when Golf and Western, the hotel chain, bought Paramount, they're like, we don't know how to make movies. They gave filmmakers the ball and ran. And I'm sure there were a lot of terrible movies from that day that we don't remember, but we remember the good ones. We remember, The Godfather and, The Conversation and other Francis Ford Coppola movies. And then we remember that era ending with Heaven's Gate, because The Deer Hunter was made. So they're like, this guy knows movies, Michael Cimino. Gives him a bunch, and then he does Heaven's Gate, and it's disastrous. And now people kind of want to reclaim that movie, which was a great disaster, some misunderstood masterpiece. I guarantee you it's not. It's crappy. And the director didn't make another good movie since, but The Deer Hunter is good. We'll always have The Deer Hunter. So, yeah. Um, that's that. So let me move on. So we are now going to count down the top 50 Best Picture movies, at least for me, that I like, according to Letterboxd. Well, not according to Letterboxd, it's organized by Letterboxd, um, because, I mean, that's what Letterboxd is best for. um, Making giant lists of movies. As for like reviewing movies, guess I just do it as like something to do. I don't think anybody really cares if I gave 5 stars to the Taylor Swift movie. Aside from my brothers, who pay attention to me not giving 5 stars to anything. Like the last movie I gave 5 stars to was The Last Dance in 2021, and then um, I'm trying to think the movie that I did even before that I gave best pick, but I don't want to look it up. I want to get right to the meat. And these are going to be the movies that have won Best Picture at the Academy Awards, and I'm gonna go through them. I've seen 50 of them, and are the is it gonna be ranked correctly? Um, well, we'll see. I'll go through. Okay, so at number 50 is Nomadland. To let you know how bad the year was, Nomadland won the Oscar for Best Picture. This movie deserves no Academy Awards, but it was a slow year because COVID destroyed everything. Um, and yeah, as a result, no movie was like released really. And it's a very boring, beautiful looking movie that feels very documentary and, and interesting when you hyper focus on area of life or a way of life about people. People really like they really respond to that kind of thing. So that's why I think critics responded to this, and it did the festival circuit, and it's directed by a woman who's like a minority. So white critics seem to think like, "Ooh, that's foreign. That's like interesting, but not. We need to celebrate that." But then the other aspect of it is that Frances McDormand, who's like this point obviously a legend, and won Best Actress, which I don't think she should have, and it's like a Best Picture TikTok that I did a while ago explaining that she's like really well loved in the Academy and respected as she should be. But like winning a third so quickly after a second for a character Fern, who, although is good, is I didn't think it was like I don't think that she was in the top. I would have given it to Carrie Mulligan for Promising Young Woman, even though I don't like that movie all that much. Um, the only Academy Award that I thought Nomadland should have won is for cinematography, um, but it didn't win for cinematography, ironically, and Mank did, which is like a gimmick because it's like black and white, recreation and stuff, and that movie sucks. Like it just straight up sucks. Um, but yeah, um, I didn't see, the other performances. I didn't watch Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. I watched like 5 minutes of it, and I'm like, why am I doing this? I'm not gonna test myself to be interesting. I'm not gonna enjoy like just some super sweaty movie. Um, you know, Even though the craft was behind it, it felt entirely like an awards play. Is why I didn't want to watch it, and it ended up winning some Oscars. Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. But it was like when Netflix was spending left and right on it. I don't like the blues that much. I don't like the 20s era. Um, but, it ended up winning for its craft. People thought that Chadwick Boseman was going to win Best Actor, essentially because he died and was black, and he had a lot of push behind that from Disney because it was essentially important for them to have like an Oscar winning actor. This is the company that did a 2020 special on the legacy of Chadwick Boseman, strictly through the Disney movies that he did. Like, they didn't honor, and this is a news organization, 2020, honoring his career. They're like, yeah, he was in these other movies, he was also Black Panther and Wakanda Forever, which, by the way, always sounds so effing stupid anytime you say it. It is a fictional country based on a comic book owned by a corporation. There's no like political statement to that. Um, but where there's profit to be made in death, people will be there. So Netflix put some money behind it and ended up winning for makeup, which I'm sure it's great, and costume design by Anne Roth, who again is really well respected in the industry. She's worked a really long time. She's won two Oscars. Um, the first one was for The English Patient, which I saw a few weeks ago, which I liked. I'll arguably say better than Oppenheimer. It won as many Oscars as Oppenheimer with seven. But yeah, she was also nominated for Talented Mr. Ripley, which I find funny because those are like two other movies that I saw recently. Neither of which won Best Picture, but oh wait, The English Patient did. Yeah, so that'll appear on my list. Um, so let's move on. So yeah, Nomadland, my least favorite Best Picture winner that I've seen. Like there have been 96 Oscars handed out for Best Picture. I've seen 50. Because a lot of them are just like they. The thing you have to understand about the Academy Awards is that they never pick the best. It's all about whose time it is and if it like fits their profile of whatever the criteria is. Like through the 90 from the 70s to like the late 90s, it was like World War II, you know. And I don't mean like that was the vibe. I mean like they would, if a movie was about World War II, they'll pick it because they were heavily Jewish, heavily old, heavily white male, and that's an easy programmer to play to. But yeah, number 49 is Moonlight. Now, this appeared in like the teens on my A24 list. I guess you could say maybe I'll surprise myself and find that I like more of these movies. But yeah, Moonlight is a beautiful chore of a movie to sit through. Like, nothing happens. It's misery porn. It kind of also feels like black trauma porn that they talk about with American Fiction and stuff, and that's just why I don't like it. I didn't heavily relate to it. I didn't relate to the character as like a kid. I related to the adult portion of it, and you know, I found it slightly moving, but I thought it, could have been achieved as a short film, with the same impact. Number 48 is Terms of Endearment. Um, Overrated, weepy movie. I don't really like it that much. My sister hilariously said, Terms of Endearment sucks. Jack Nicholson is barely in it, which is kind of true, although he did win Best Supporting Actor for that movie. It's kind of plotless. It's supposed to be, it's about Deborah Winger and Shirley MacLaine as mother and daughter who like fight but ultimately love each other. It's great casting. Jeff Daniels, who weirdly was not nominated for that movie, and they nominated John Lithgow, who I don't really remember in that movie, but like that's a Jeff Daniels role to be nominated for that. But they didn't nominate him because it's like one of those weird things, like with Tom Hanks with Captain Phillips, where it's like, yeah, this is amazing, not nominated, and then they nominate him for playing Mister Rogers in Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. Weird. The Academy is weird. Um, this movie at the time was, I mean, James L. Brooks wrote it and directed it, so it was like probably his big entrance. Although I'll always think of James L. Brooks as the guy who did The Simpsons. Funny enough. But yeah, he won Best Picture. Shirley MacLaine won Best Actress. Jack Nicholson won Supporting Actor. Um, and the most annoying thing about how IMDb, by the way, organizes itself now is like, oh, I want to see who won that Academy Award, and then like it takes me to the most current year, which I know all the current winners. I saw it. So now I have to go to 1984 and scroll down and see like if I disagree with anything. Interestingly enough, Shirley MacLaine was nominated opposite Deborah Winger. Um, do I care? No. Could they have given it to Meryl Streep in Silkwood? I don't know. Probably. Um, but yeah, there aren't any other things I think about. That Fanny and Alexander is the one movie where people mention a lot, which ended up winning a few Academy Awards that year. Um, that gets mentioned with that people are like, oh, well, this movie should have won. Ingmar Bergman, legend. It ended up winning 4 Academy Awards, which is insane for like a 4 hour foreign language film, especially at the time. Um, so yeah, if I can friggin' scroll down, I mean, best director, um, why not give it to Ingmar Bergman? Um, you know, Mike Nichols, good director. Haven't seen Silkwood, I'm sure it's great. Bruce Beresford, he's Canadian, I believe. Hey, good James L. Brooks, Peter Yates, also a well-known director. These are all good ones, but you look at it in retrospect and you're like, should the guy who did the weepy drama, um, you know, they gave him best director rather than the foreigner who did like a 4 hour movie that is like super incredibly well regarded. It's just kind of the annoying thing when critics throw all these praises on somebody and then the Academy doesn't. And it's I understand they're two different entities, but it's annoying. This guy was nominated for 9 Academy Awards and never won, but I still have to put up with film bros who mention him all the time because, he, aside from Fanny and Alexander, he also did, Scenes from a Marriage, the original miniseries, is what he's known for. Um, he did win the Irving G. Thalberg Award, which is sort of like, a major career lifetime achievement award. So you can't totally say that he was completely ignored, but he is known probably best for The Seventh Seal. Um, and he also did the movie Persona, which recently got like remade as a inspired by a commercial starring Scarlett Johansson from the director of The Zone of Interest. Um, haven't seen it. It's like for perfume or something. Secure that bag, guys. Secure that bag. And I'm trying to think of, what's the one that people really know about this guy that he did? Like, there's got to be one that I'm missing. Or is it like Persona is like the big one? Um, and going back, it's weird because he's from a time. If you go to directors in the '50s, they did like 4 times as many movies. Um, so it's kind of insane to be like, oh yeah, they did a movie 18 months. Like the only person who works on that schedule now, um, aside from Steven Spielberg, who's taking some time off, is Taylor Swift. So great people do great work often. Um, yeah. Anyways, Fanny and Alexander was probably the one that I'd picked this year, and I haven't seen it, but it's like strictly from the lens of like, what's the best film we think of today? Would they have known that at the time? I don't know, but 47 is 12 Years a Slave. Gary Oldman talked about this movie of like 12 Years a Slave. If you didn't vote for this movie, you're a racist, is basically what the Academy told its voters that year. And I remember watching that movie on like my 1921-inch LCD compressed display and watching the movie and thinking, oh my God, this is so boring. Like, well done technically, but boring. And like, meanwhile, in the background of watching this in the living room, the kitchen is connected, and my roommates are having like the biggest blow up of a fight possible that they've been, when when your roommates in college and people kind of say, somebody gets on your nerves, but you kind of hold it to yourself and everybody's in their room, so you don't get to talk to people directly, and there's passive aggressive notes and texts. This is like months to 2 months of that blowing up, where basically, um, one person who I like better, um, came in with their groceries and put all their stuff in the fridge. And then the the one person, I'm not sure if it was she took one of her, yeah. So I have two roommates, okay? The one who I like comes in, brings in all of her groceries, and puts all her groceries in the fridge. Now she can't fit them all in, uh, because the other roommate, who's nice to talk to but kind of crazy, puts stuff back. They don't put it in a Ziploc bag or a container. They take the whole casserole dish for like one chicken breast and put that and take up like a quarter of a shelf or half of a shelf. And it's like, well, you can't just do that. Like other people are in the fridge. So, anyways, the roommate who doesn't do confrontation well is just like, okay, we're not gonna put like an entire friggin' pot of like a chicken breast have that take up a shelf in the fridge. So she takes it out of the fridge, but doesn't put it in like a container, like a plastic container, because she can't find it. So she just leaves it out there. And meanwhile, I'm watching 12 Years a Slave during the scene where Solomon Northup is like standing on his tiptoes so he doesn't like strangle to death by a tree. And like, meanwhile, the most like kind of hilarious thing is happening in real life. So it wasn't the best viewing experience. I even said to my mom after, it's like, yeah, you know, out of the few movies, this probably should get a rewatch. Um, because I didn't like, I know I always have the rule of like, if you watched a film beginning to end, you watched it. Like, it doesn't matter if you're like on your phone. It's different if you're looking at another screen, though. Like, if you're completely not paying attention. But, like, if I watched a movie and I start watching it with the intention and I'm sitting in the chair to watch the movie and I look at my phone a few times, it counts enough. And then the other thing was that, I finished Platoon about a month ago. Um, when did I watch that movie? Uh, I watched about the first 45 minutes of it in like when I was 11 or something like that, trying to stay up the whole night after staying up. And it was like about 6 a.m. And I stayed up from 6 a.m. to 6:45 a.m. trying to watch it to keep me awake. Little did I know it's an Oliver Stone movie. And that will appear on this list, but I'll just get it out of the way now. Yeah, Oliver Stone is a boring director, and he's always been a boring director. Decent writer, he has plenty to write about. JFK being one, but yeah, super boring director. All of his movies are a slog. He has like 4 Academy Awards. Good for him. But if you're wondering why he's a bit of a pariah, it's because he does things his own way, like he fought with Tarantino over directing the script to Natural Born Killers, and he took Tarantino's script and like changed things around. And of course, Quentin isn't gonna have that, man. So yeah, there was like a big fight. So, but I did like he's a real maverick. What can I say? Went to Vietnam, served in Vietnam. Um, you know, he's done a few good movies, Wall Street being one. That's an entertaining, boring movie that I can't even recall if I haven't seen. I've seen the sequel, Money Never Sleeps. I've watched the cameo of Charlie Sheen on YouTube a few times. That's a boring movie, great cast. He just doesn't have the flair. But so yeah, I said to myself, I finished the movie. It counts as me watching it, but at some time I'll have to rewatch it, on the full screen and stuff to do it justice. But I just like it's misery, trauma, slavery, porn, you know, like black trauma. Like, what's the point? Like, what's the exercise here? We're just trying to make audiences uncomfortable to what end so they know how bad slavery is. You're okay, you know. Switching gears to something a bit more opposite. A Man for All Seasons won Best Picture. And yeah, that movie feels like an Aaron Sorkin film. That's also like sort of a TV movie. Um, yeah, it has a few witty one-liners. A friend of mine who's been on this podcast, Nick Cotman, watched it and said, "I watched this movie. It was good." And the main guy, Paul Schofield, is good. Um, this movie won 6 Oscars. Pauline Kael, I'm so glad to hear about this. If you don't know, Pauline Kael is like the Roger Ebert respected. She's like the most well-known movie critic in like film writing circles, and she wrote, "Yeah, Man for All Seasons, pretty good made-for-TV movie. No friggin' way should it have won Best Picture." But this is 1967, okay, one of the older movies I've seen on the list. And in the 60s, there weren't people like me on the internet saying, it should have won, this should have won, you know. But Paul Schofield won um, Best Actor for that movie. Um, wasn't present there. But yeah, it won Best Picture, Best Actor, Best Director, Best Adapted Screenplay, best cinematography and color when they had that, and best costume design, which of course it would win because it's a period piece. Um, but yeah, is there? I hate how IMDb, by the way, organizes this because like best picture should be at the top. Is it? No. Um, but yeah, that was the year of Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, where Sandy Dennis and Liz Taylor won. That's a good movie. Guess who directed that? I mentioned him earlier, Mike Nichols. Yeah, that movie won three Academy Awards. Fantastic Voyage, where it's basically the Magic School Bus. For those who don't know, that was the winner of Art Direction Set Decoration. Why am I focusing on this? You know, how many Oscars did Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf win? Because I'm always like, when a movie like Dune wins 6 Oscars, but not Best Picture, it's kind of weird, isn't it? Because it's like, oh yeah, it's the best movie in 5 categories, which is how much Virginia Woolf won. But it's not good enough to win. But yeah, I mean, it was an okay movie. I rented it or watched it from the library, and then it froze on me, so I wasn't able to finish it till you guessed it, like years later. Like with Platoon, where I got 45 minutes in and then continued where I left off from when I was 11. I'm 30 now, so But I remember most stuff from movies. Like, I worry about losing it because I don't remember names as well. Just these past couple years, it's like a COVID thing. I didn't get COVID, but it's like, I don't know, my brain fatigued. It doesn't exercise as much, I guess. But yeah, Fred Zinnemann won Best Director for Man of All Seasons. The other nominees were Michelangelo and Antonioni. I don't know how to say it. Michelangelo Antonioni and Michelangelo Antonioni. No, Michelangelo Antonioni. Antonioni. I'll get it. I'll leave it. You don't have to hear it. But I studied Blow Up in cinema class. I like I watched it. It's a good movie. Um, and again, it's hard to do a good movie from 1967 that you watch today and can enjoy. That is that movie. It's basically if you've seen Brian De Palma's Blowout, which kind of takes the visual of this movie, makes it auditory. My dad actually has Blow Up on DVD and then Blowout on VHS, or we might have it now in a combo pack on DVD with Broken Arrow, which I still need to watch. I don't know. I need to check my DVDs again. There's so many, and they're not my DVDs; they're my dad's. But anyways, um, Blow Up. This guy clearly should have won. It's a movie we're still talking about today. Mike Nichols would have made a fine winner there, but he won for The Graduate. So like they were like, we don't need to award him again. The Graduate, by the way, decent film. It's the only Oscar that he won, and he won it like pretty early in his career, considering how long he won. But yeah, it's like, oh, we'll give it to the crowd pleaser because that's what they did all the time. And now they don't really have crowd pleasers for the Oscars. They'll have something like, because people are too critical. The movies are like it's too competitive at the high level. So yeah, I just wanted to say I like Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf better, um, and that's what I would have picked. Although I still haven't seen The Sand Pebbles with Steve McQueen that Robert Wise directed. Robert Wise, who did um, West Side Story, the original. So, and the original Haunting as well. This guy won for, yeah, I forget. He also did Star Trek and The Sound of Music, um, and The Andromeda Strain, which I haven't seen, but which I believe is the same one based on the Michael Crichton novel. But yeah, Robert Wise is like, has more Oscars than Steven Spielberg. He's like regarded as one of the best directors ever. Um, Although I would say that you know Spielberg is better because it's harder to it's harder to direct now. Like, and he also won an Irving G like Spielberg did. It's harder to direct now. It's more competitive. You have more control over stuff, but yeah. Um, anyways, moving on. So, A Man for All Seasons. Okay movie. Watch it on TV, maybe in the background while folding laundry. Um, Annie Hall, number 45, classic. It's not, I don't find it that funny. It's kind of, it's weird to say this. It's a proto When Harry Met Sally sort of thing. And When Harry Met Sally was basically gonna redo Annie Hall, and then Rob Reiner fell in love, and he also made a better film because he's more in touch with his romantic sensibilities. The story of Woody Allen, Diane Keaton. Woody Allen meets Diane Keaton. She's Annie Hall. They date, walk around New York City. It's like the blueprint for the modern rom com. Um, it's I. It's not in black and white. It does some like it's the Woody Allen was like the first, I guess, of his kind to kind of like do that those weird fourth wall breaks and like snidey Deadpool type comedy. But I just don't find when people say comedy, it's kind of funny in like a peculiar way, like oh that's funny, oh what a coincidence and stuff. I mean, if you think his sense of humor is like good, you can go watch A Rainy Day in New York, which stars Timothy Chalamet and Selena Gomez, which is the reason why Selena Gomez wanted to go talk to Timothy Chalamet, and then Kylie Jenner. This is at the Golden Globes, by the way. Said I went to talk to him and said no and whispered to Taylor Swift. It was a big drama thing because Kylie and Selena were feuding in a way which I totally get because Kylie Jenner criticized Selena Gomez's eyebrows, which were worthy of criticism if you ask me. And I like Selena Gomez, but they were worthy of criticism. And then that beef started, and it went back and forth and stuff. So those girls hate each other for life now. If any girls are anything to go by. So enter Timothy Chalamet, who for whatever reason, good for him, dates Kylie Jenner, and who's like a single mom. So that's like kind of interesting that he's like, ding, ding, that's how it is. It's just weird. I wouldn't think about that. Um, Man, these digressions are insane. But anyways, um, good for Timothy Chalamet. Good for Kylie Jenner. I'm sure they're rich and happy. But anyways, Selena Gomez goes, uh, asks, "Oh, can I take a photo with Timothy?" And Kylie says no, because obviously, if Timothy Chalamet takes a photo with Selena Gomez, people won't talk about their friendship. They'll be like, "Oh, Selena Gomez and Timothy Chalamet, are they cheating on Kylie Jenner?" Because people are so immature about this stuff. But Kylie Jenner knows that, so obviously she says no to Selena Gomez's photo op, even though she's like, I've seen A Rainy Day in New York. Timmy and I are friends, you know, and yeah, they're like romantic interests in that movie, and they're just like reciting the most wooden alien dialogue there is. That's like so interesting. It's like if I wrote a script and had the pull that Woody Allen has to get a movie made. That's where Selena Gomez goes back to her table where uh, Kelly Teller, who spells her name so friggin' weird, Keleigh. What the hell? And her name's Kelly, or Kaylee. I who knows? But anyways, Selena Gomez whispers to Taylor Swift, "I asked to take a photo with him, and she said no." And Taylor's like, "No," and it's like all high school. And then Kelly is like the third friend who's like not famous, but famous because her husband is famous. It's very Gretchen Wieners of her, and is like, "Oh my gosh, really?" But anyway, I'm being judgmental. Just like I am about Annie Hall, an overrated movie where people say it's a classic, and yes, it broke a lot of barriers, but it's not really that funny as people say it is. And it's like sort of an interesting oddity because as with most movies on this list, things have been done better since. Unless that thing is everything, everywhere, all at once. Movie which feels like a music video tech demo. And that's just kind of what I'll say all about that because I've talked about that, I'm pretty sure, in previous podcasts. I don't like the movie. Everybody thought it's like, oh, this is cool because representation and, that kind of thing. Ignoring the fact that the movie is kind of a mess. Um, and it gets by on, well, that's sort of the point, and a good performance by Michelle Yeoh and Ki Hoi Kwan. Um, but yeah, Top Gun Maverick should have won that year. Um, Number 43, Bridge on the River Kwai. This is another movie directed by David Lean, who did Lawrence of Arabia, that was hugely celebrated. And it's one of those, oh, you got to watch this great movie. My grandfather loves that movie, and it's just basically about a guy who's put in charge of a bridge um, that is supposed to blow up. Um, do, and the main guy is Alec Guinness, who is Obi-Wan Kenobi, and yeah, it's kind of an interesting war movie. The classic story of English POWs in Burma forced to build a bridge to aid the war effort of their Chinese captors. British and American intelligence officers conspire to blow up the structure, but Colonel Nicholson, the commander who supervises the bridge construction, has acquired a sense of pride in his creation and tries to foil their plans. Now, is that like, it's interesting. Sometimes you read plot descriptors and you're like, is that a spoiler? Like I remember with Slumdog Millionaire, come up on this list. The plot of that movie is like, yeah, a guy goes on Millionaire, wins, and gets accused of cheating. So the whole time I'm like, oh, he's gonna win, but he doesn't like win until the end. Spoiler for Slumdog Millionaire, by the way. I'm sorry, but like, um, which a smarter person would be like, of course he'll win. But if you watch it, you'll still be on the edge of your seat. And I'm really sorry about spoiling that, I guess. But hey, you know, um, if it gets to the point where somebody gets mad at me that I spoiled this, then that's like a good thing because it means I'm a success, I guess, because somebody listened to this podcast. Um, but yeah, some plot descriptions just spoil their movie outright, even though they're supposed to be the main like sliver that's supposed to tell people what the movie was about. The movie Argyle was like that because although it wasn't part of the plot description, in early, very early, like I'm talking before the movie was even filmed, tidbit about the movie Argyle was that the main character forgot that they were secret agent Argyle, and then when they figured it out later in the marketing, it was like a mystery of like who the real Argyle was, forgetting that they said that it was like the main character all along. But yeah, um, does Bridge on the River Kwai spoil it? I don't know. By the time you watch it, I'm sure it'll have nothing to do with anything I said here because it's not a movie I like. It's a movie that I watched with my mother in her room, and it was like one of those, oh, this movie's a classic, and then they watch it, and it's like, well, that didn't hold up. It's just, it's an older movie. It's from uh, 1957, so give it some leeway. The performances are really good, but the way in which older movies operate on plot logic, they skip entire scenes of like character motivation, of timing. They go across sands of time within minutes. Like, if you watch an old movie, they're not afraid to skip to like 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, 1 month later. But they don't even have the title card that says that because they probably couldn't even do that back then. So the older movies are very go with the flow of like, and this happened. So, because again, they weren't as heavily scrutinized. Um, so yeah, um, I'm sure somebody could do like sort of a remake of that now, which people would call blasphemous. But yeah, it's just the story of a man who, takes pride in ownership of something that he does not know will be destroyed. Is just kind of an interesting drama, but and it has a good ending. But yeah, I didn't like it as much. Okay, so now moving on to number 42, which is, you guessed it, The English Patient. I'm surprised in the week that, or 2 weeks, I'll say, that since I've seen this, that it's only 42, because I greatly admire this Anthony Minghella picture, which swept the Oscars pretty much, winning 7 Academy Awards, mostly probably due to the tactics of Harvey Weinstein. Um, so, yeah, it won a bunch of Oscars, and it's a movie of great craft. It has great, memorable characters, good performances. Juliette Binoche, who won. I just find that it's a romance movie where the two romances, the romancers, how do I say that? And that's are Ray Fiennes and Kristen Scott Thomas, who are like pretty, in my opinion, like icy, non charismatic people. Like, Ray is pretty good. Oh, shoot, this won 9 Oscars, not 7? Okay, it won 2 more than Oppenheimer. Well, I like it more than Oppenheimer, anyways. But yeah, that's right, because I forget that's back in the day when they split up score into like comedy score and like dramatic score, which is like weird. But yeah, it won Best Picture, Best Actor. No, no, no. Best Picture. God, I hate the way IMDb organizes this. It won Best Picture, Best Supporting Actress, Best Director, Best Cinematography by John Seal, who also shot Mad Max. The shot of a plane crashing in front of Ray Fiennes and he dives out of the way is absolutely amazing. The art direction and set decoration is very good by Stuart Craig, who was later hired for um, uh, Harry Potter, and pretty much is single handedly the reason why that movie has any cinematic lasting legacy. Because like the world is incredibly made by this guy. Lucky to still have him there. We have Ant Roth, who I mentioned, and then Walter Murch, who did the sound and editing as well. And then the score by Gabriel Yared is quite good. So yeah, I think that a sweep of a movie like today is harder to do. But then you still get like Oppenheimer, as good as it was, it couldn't, it wasn't going to be Barbie for like original song, it, I'm, I can't go back and think about, uh, even from this year's Oscars, what movie did, did they compete against? But what I can say is this was the year, by the way, Frances McDormand won against Fargo. And going back, you would probably look at it and be like, yeah, the Coen brothers should have won for Fargo for Best Director. But, The English Patient is a big movie. So, you know, give it to him. Um, and Mike Lee or Mike Lay, British guy. Um, who does like his own indie movies. He did this movie Secrets and Lies, which is like really well regarded. Um, and then you have Milos Forman, who was nominated for The People versus Larry Flint. Now, I don't have to tell you this is not a good movie. It's in fact a very boring movie. That's in my opinion doesn't hold up at all. Um, I but it's like, why did they make it? But it's like, oh, Milos Forman. It's, he did Amadeus, so he's for life. Amadeus, by the way, still have to see it. And then there's the last guy, Scott Hicks. There's always kind of, and to be fair, I haven't seen Shine, and Scott Hicks did later direct the Zac Efron movie, The Lucky One, um, about Zac Efron is serving. It's based on a Nicholas Sparks novel. He goes, picks up a picture of a woman, that his buddy, who served with, is his wife. Picks up a woman. His platoon steps on like a landmine, gets all knocked out, and he's lucky because he saw a photo that he went to go out and pick up the picture. And the character, who's the love interest, is played by Taylor Schilling, who was in Piper and Orange is the New Black. Anyway, it was a big hit, respectable career for that guy to direct. But he's kind of the Todd Phillips in 2019 directing Joker when like Greta Gerwig should have been nominated, and then you have like Pong Joon Ho and like Martin Scorsese, and then it's like and Todd Phillips for Joker, and you're like, okay, does this like? There's always like a fifth guy who kind of isn't of the level of the other four, but was in a like a really trendy movie that came at the right time. And sometimes, who knows, they can people can recreate that, but yeah, that was the year the boxing movie, When We Were Kings, won best documentary, which I haven't seen but hear great things about. But um moving on, Ordinary People, number 41. This is an interesting movie. It's like sort of an emotionally complex movie, but it also fits in the category of what I would call a TV drama, like a really high-end Lifetime movie. It's directed by Robert Redford, and it's just about a portrait of a family who are all sad, and you don't really know why. And it's gradually revealed these emotional truths of a devastating backstory. Um, and it's kind of like the first type of movie to do that kind of thing. I always think of it as the movie that was written by Alvin Sargent, who wrote Spider Man 2. Um, and then I watched this and was kind of bored by it. But good performances by Donald Sutherland. It's kind of weird how he was snubbed, and I mean not even nominated. And then the boy in it, Timothy Hutton, won at Best Supporting Actor at 19. Um, One of the youngest men to ever win an Academy Award for acting. The youngest person to win an Academy Award for acting is younger than me. It was Adrian Brody at 29, but yeah, guys don't usually win acting awards when they're young. So, number 40, Midnight Cowboy, a movie that I saw quite recently. Now, Midnight Cowboy, you can tell, is a movie made and there were a couple, 69. So, in 1969, it's used in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood as kind of the end of an era, the end of the 60s. It's one of the few decades, aside from the beginning of 2020, where it like has a very distinct end of the decade and beginning in terms of style. And what you see that with actually is uh, Midnight Cowboy winning, which indicated that people wanted to see, something different. And with uh, with Midnight Cowboy, you get that. There's not a lot that happens in this movie, which is sort of the interesting thing. It it's plotless. It's about a guy played by John Voight who wants to go to New York and become like a porn star essentially, and ends up falling on hard times. You really see the seedy underbelly of um, this kind of this kind of movie, and John Schlesinger was nominated for best director for this movie, and he ended up winning against George Roy Hill, who directed Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid and They Shoot Horses, Don't They? Directed by Sidney Pollack, and Z by Costa Gavras. And I'll just name it, even though I've never heard of it, Alice's Restaurant by Arthur Penn. I don't like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. However, I would say directorially it is superior to this movie. Midnight Cowboy is just like a fascinating film, but it's been done better since that kind of plot line. And so it was nominated for Best Picture, Director, Actor, Supporting Actress, Adapted Screenplay by Waldo Salt. and it won that along with director and picture. And it contains the famous line, "Hey, I'm walking here," by Dustin Hoffman, which is famously where the taxi driver ignored the signs that the movie was actually being filmed, and then drove through the set and almost ran into him. Um, Waldo Salt won two Oscars for one for Midnight Cowboy and one for Coming Home, which I believe also starred John Voight. So he was something back then. Very tall guy. You can see for the first time, it's like, oh, I see the resemblance between him and Angelina Jolie. They have like the same darty eyes and that kind of thing. So it's interesting. I have never seen anybody more greasy than Rizzo the Rat, aka Dustin Hoffman, is in this movie, and he inspired Rizzo the Rat from the Muppets, actually, which is kind of funny. Um, but yeah, I saw it. It's interesting, I guess. What annoys me is that, yeah, uh, as I get older, this is what I wrote on Letterboxd. As I get older and poorer, I understand and appreciate stories about people scraping by, where before they would make me uncomfortable. I always ask myself what I would do, but there's too little to this story despite having a strong friendship and good performances at the center. How did this win the big three, two of which were opposite Butch Cassidy? I think in the moment it's a No Country versus There Will Be Blood situation. People want something that's just edgy enough without fully committing to something too dark. The darkest parts of this picture are the most interesting, and it's so tame compared to today, which would be an easy R rating. I would equate this to basically Joker, where this is seen as like the first X-rated movie to win an Oscar. And today it's about as edgy as Joker, which was like, an easy R rating, but seen as scandalous. Imagine how scandalous this movie was, you know, in the late 60s. Um, it's a nice dark tale that I found lacking in resolution and also found was missing some scenes and repetitive, but it had great use of music. Yeah, number 39. Shakespeare in Love. Harvey Weinstein's Oscar. This is the one where he got his name on it. This is the movie that famously beat Saving Private Ryan for Best Picture at the Oscars. And it's a movie about making movies in the sense that, they put on a show. So many people are in this movie. But in the lead is Joseph Fiennes, who has not been in like a lead since, but you have Gwyneth Paltrow, Jeffrey Rush, Tom Wilkinson, Judi Dench, Dolores Umbridge from Harry Potter, Colin Firth, I should say Imelda Staunton is her name, by the way. Ben Affleck, even, that's just kind of like there's that Family Guy joke of, oh no, I have Shakespeare in 5 minutes. Let me put on an accent. Rupert Everett is in it. Yeah, a lot of people. And John Madden directed it. He's done a few decent movies. He's also responsible for doing the movie Dreamhouse, which put James Bond 007, Daniel Craig, and Rachel Weisz together. So, yay there. And it's written by Tom Stoppard, who's just kind of like this playwright who's like kind of a screenwriting superstar, I guess. Or he's just seen as like that guy. That guy has the secret sauce. Anything he does will be great. And Tom Stoppard also wrote Empire of the Sun, or adapted it. And I did not think that it was, how do I say, great. Even though people thought it was like, how do I say, like a hidden gem of Spielberg's. But nonetheless, Stoppard won the screenplay award, Best Original Screenplay for it. And it's a pretty decent story of like historical fiction and whatnot. So yeah, I enjoyed it. And when I think of Shakespeare, I do think of Shakespeare in Love because this movie is just high end, exactly perfectly representing like the late 90s. And it's kind of a fun, light, frothy movie that it's like, yeah, Saving Private Ryan is a better movie, um, smeared and dark and gray and rough and the most, one of the most intense war movies ever made and has great performances. And then this movie is just kind of slight by comparison. Like everybody, let's put on a show, and then that wins after you see like the backbreaking work done by the technical team in Spielberg behind that D-Day landing, which everybody copies from. So, yeah, it I can understand people being upset. When I watched it the second time, because I watched it as a kid and I remember seeing the end of it, like, or the second half of it, and thinking it was kind of funny. They don't make movies really like this anymore. Gwyneth Paltrow won her Oscar for it. And yeah, it's obviously won its fair share of awards, uh, pretty much in part because Harvey Weinstein famously like lobbied everything. Um, it, as I said, uh, it's the first comedy to win Best Picture since Annie Hall in '77. Comedies don't win that often. I can't remember the last comedy that won. I mean, would you consider Green Book a comedy? I guess. If I haven't seen Green Book, spoiler alert, it is not on this list. It is like one of the highest grossing Best Picture winners of, or the second highest grossing Best Picture winner behind Oppenheimer of the last 10 years. And I just didn't get around to seeing it. I saw the previews and it's just kind of like Viggo Mortensen being racist at first and then not racist. It's like Driving Miss Daisy in reverse. Although, I haven't seen Driving Miss Daisy either. So there you go. I mean, but do I need to? That's the question. Do I need to? I mean, I've seen Do the Right Thing, the movie that should have won, but yeah, Spike Lee won supporting actor. Uh, he should have won supporting actor for his performance at that Academy Awards because he actually gets cut to a whole bunch of times on TV and is hilarious. And he's asked in an interview about it. He's like, every time there's like a black person driving a white person, I lose. Uh, you know, um, which made me laugh because people refer to Green Book as just driving Miss Daisy in reverse. But anyways, this movie won Best Original Comedy Score. Best costume design by who? Sandy Powell, and we'll have mentioned before, one of the best. Art direction, screenplay. Um, Judy Dench won supporting actress, and she's in that movie at the end for like 5 minutes as the queen. Gwyneth Paltrow, of course, won her award, and Best Picture with Edward Zwick also run one. He produced it. He directed Last Samurai. So it's like a positive film about the industry of like plays, which isn't similar to like the movie industry. So that's why everybody um, went for it. The producer is named Jonna Gigliotti. Sorry for butchering that name. Donna Gigliotti. Anyway, she produced Hidden Figures, Silver Linings Playbook, and 80 for Brady, apparently, as well. So, like, the reader, it's like what I love about certain careers in Hollywood is that somebody will have done, like, the movies that they're known for, their genre, and then they'll, like, out of left field, do something completely different. Like, similar to how Jennifer Lawrence is known for, like, dramas and winning an Academy Award, and then she does No Hard Feelings because it's like I love movies. If you love movies, you do everything. So yeah. Um, her next movie, by the way, because I haven't paid attention to this person much, but it's called Donna Gigliotti. That, by the way, her next movie is an adaptation of In the Shadow of the Mountain, and it details an author's personal story of surviving childhood sexual abuse and domestic violence in Peru and how she overcame those experiences to become a successful businesswoman and mountaineer. The memoir also documents Vasquez Lovado's promise to bring a group of survivors from sexual abuse and sex trafficking to the base of Mount Everest before Vasquez Lovado's journey to climb Mount Everest. In addition, In the Shadow of the Mountain documents Vasquez Lovado's voyage climbing the highest peaks on each continent. It's the author's first book, and in addition, there is an ongoing film adaptation with Selena Gomez scheduled to play Sylvia. When was that announced? Because it's like, yeah, it's possible. November 11th, 2020. Selena Gomez to play trailblazing gay mountaineer. Well, good luck to that movie being made. Nothing has been announced in 4 years. It was published 2 years ago. But hey, stranger things have happened. Good luck for your next movie, Donna. Uh, you know, um, 80 for Brady was a mild success. So, you know, there you go. She used to be an assistant to Martin Scorsese. I learned. So, you know, it's how it goes. Um, anyway, um, what is next on the list? The next movie on the list. We need to burn through this stuff because what am I at right now? I'm like 57 plus 30. Like I'm an hour and a half in. Number 38, Birdman. This was at a time when I was in university, so I was going to see more films than usual, and I saw so many that I don't really have distinct memory of seeing this in the theater. This, I believe, I saw it at the second run theater in a mall at an independent cinema where tickets were like $2.50. I almost went there like twice in one day before and after an exam. Around like 2016 or something like that. Yeah, we'll get a life. But my life is I love movies. So, there you go. Birdman's okay movie. Like, it's okay. It kind of goes up its own rear end at the end. It's entertaining. The gimmick of one shot is well done. Love seeing how it takes place in sort of the real world where everybody refers to like actual other actors, and then the acting is good. The cinematography, of course, is good. Um, and the people are super offended by this. But when Sean Penn announced Best Director, he said to a guy who was a friend of his, and I believe he'd worked with before, Alexander Gonzalez Inarritu. He's like, "Who gave this bastard a green card? Birdman." And it's people are like, "What a racist joke to say." But it's an entertaining enough movie. I don't really know many people who like think super highly of it. All ever see are reviews where it's like, "Oh, that was better than expected." It's like, well, what do I care what you expect? Like, it's one thing when it's like, well, everybody thought that this movie was going to be terrible and it turned out to be great. But it's like, well, I thought this movie would suck. Well, if you thought it would suck and it turns out to be great, then maybe you suck. You know, I'm never that far off myself. Usually I'm like within 2 or 3 points of like my guess of what something is. I'm rarely surprised. And when I'm surprised, it's always like sentimental. Like I've talked about the movie Band Slam, which I love, starring Vanessa Hudgens, Lisa Kudrow, about these kids in high school who put together a band for like Battle of the Bands. And it's like a romance. And the kid is kind of, oh, I'll just say it as my mom would say, homely. And he gets to be with Vanessa Hudgens. Come on. But hey, it's wish fulfillment, people. This is the DreamWorks business. Okay. Yeah. Birdman ended up winning Best Picture, Best Director, Best Screenplay, which is kind of wild because it's credited to like 4 different people separately. Um, so it's I don't know which order, but it's an and where it's like one guy worked on it and then another did a polish, and then my guess is that they were the second draft. The first draft was one guy, and then the director always gets like an assistant credit if they try and do much, which people don't argue with a whole lot. I kind of go like anytime you see a movie that's like written and directed by somebody, and it's like the director and a co-writer, it's like yeah, the co-writer did most of it most of the time. Like with the Fablemans with Steven Spielberg, I imagine that Tony Kushner helped write most of that. Like, and Spielberg probably did the work because he doesn't get credited on scripts often. But like he said that he worked for 3 months with Tony Kushner, who's a professional, and like worked out the ideas. But yeah, interesting. You're only allowed like 2 sets of teams in the U.S. in order to get credit for a movie. So it's like two people have to get credit, two people have to get like screen story, and then two people have to get like story, which is like different. It's weird how the WGA only allows like so few people, whereas in Britain, it's like you can add literally as many people to a script as possible. Um, whereas like I don't know, it's possible that like six people could be credited, but like the only movie that I can think of that did that was Scary Movie 3, and that movie had no chance of being Oscar nominated, even though it is the funniest movie of all time. Check it. All right, so what's next? Um, I picked Unforgiven, um, which is a super boring movie, like some of Clint Eastwood's movies, but like it's nice to look at. Like it's like Red Dead Redemption, which is totally inspired by Unforgiven, um, and rips it off as much as possible. Unforgiven, just great characters, great setup. So like an old guy who's basically like a bounty hunter at the end of his days is a bad guy who's asked to take down a more bad guy played by Gene Hackman, who's like a corrupt sheriff. You get a lot of great actors in there. Morgan Freeman is in there, looking old as always, and Gene Hackman again, very good. I won't go into the Oscar stuff just because it's it's a bit old hat. Like I don't want to um, beat a dead horse, really. But yeah, Unforgiven came out right around the time 1992, before I was born, and it was nominated against The Crying Game, which is a game I've heard people talk about and joke about. Pretty sure it's a British movie. Um, is it about AIDS? It's about AIDS. No, it's about the IRA. Um, yeah. Wait, Dill. Okay. It's about trans people. He would take care. Gosh, the way that Wikipedia describes the plot of a movie is so unhelpful, and I don't mean the plot section, I mean like the summary. Granted, it's written by amateurs, but it's like it's not like X meets Y when Z happens. It's like this happens, then this happens, then this happens in like three sentences. Um, so yeah, I honestly literally have no idea what this movie is about, which is probably why I haven't seen it. Um, Neil Jordan directed it, who did Interview with the Vampire and a couple of other things. The Company of Wolves. That movie's from the '80s. That's on Tubi. I need to see. It's like a French movie about werewolves and stuff like that. So it's supposed to be pretty cool. But yeah, his career took off after that. Then he did Michael Collins, which was well reviewed, and then Breakfast on Pluto, which like won a few awards. Then he did The Brave one, but he's kind of interestingly kind of gone off the deep end since then because he did Byzantium, which is about vampires, and Greta, which people really liked. That's with Chloe Moretz and Isabelle Huppert. Um, yeah. Um, the uh, anyway, um, and then he did Marlowe, the latest Liam Neeson movie, and that sucked. Like that, it was boring. I like it though. I like those old noir detective movies as long as they aren't too boring. It's like, hey, it's walking around questioning people, shows up. It's just it's easy to do repetitive, and that movie is like kind of half-assed. But yeah, I always get confused between Neil Jordan and Neil Berger and Neil Marshall because they're like all British and they all do like kind of B level movies that are kind of light entertainment. But yeah, haven't seen the Crying Game. But yeah, the A Few Good Men is probably the one that's watched the most. Scent of a Woman, the second most, which I really like. Like I like that more than A Few Good Men. People find it too formulaic. Al Pacino, hoo-ah, yells too much. But I don't, I think it makes sense for the character, and I like it actually the most. And then Howard's End, of course, which is like one of those arty movies, really well regarded. And when I say arty, I mean arty Oscary. Like I don't mean arty experimental. Um, but yeah, it's like what they call a Merchant Ivory movie because it's directed by Ismail. No, it's directed. Wow, It's produced by Ismail Merchant and directed by James Ivory. So yeah, and they did like a few of those movies. Uh, One that they did was they did Remains of the Day, which came out like a year later, and I can barely tell those movies apart. Why? Because I haven't seen them. And then that person, Ismail Merchant, died. But James Ivory did win a screenplay award for Call Me by Your Name, so there's that. But yeah, what movie should have won? I guess I would pick A Few Good Men because people like it so much. Aaron Sorkin's first movie, Rob Reiner directed it, and Rob Reiner would have an Oscar. Hey, um, but yeah, it's a decent list of Best Picture movies. But yeah, Unforgiven. Oh, it's very boring. There, I said it. It's very boring. It's a movie that I feel like you're supposed to like. Um, uh, yeah, and it um, what's my problem with it? Clint Eastwood is kind of can make boring movies, but they speak to people. You know, he's not flashy. He doesn't. You know, he does one take. Everybody shows up. They do their thing, um, and you know, it's just they speak to people. I mean, I remember watching Mystic River, um, and I could not stop with my friend laughing the entire time. We laughed and talked through the movie. Why? Because there's not really, aside from Sean Penn being like held back by the mob, which again happens the same way to Hugh Jackman in Prisoners, the father, like, oh, my daughter, you know, like aside from that image, there aren't really any memorable images in that movie aside from the guy going away in the back of the police car and stuff. But like, yeah, it's not a very visually driven film, despite having a lot of like famous people in it. And the script, even though it's based on a book by Dennis Lehane, is very much like this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. So it's not like as involving as it should be. And Dennis Lehane, who did Shutter Island and Gone Baby Gone and a bunch of other stuff he wrote for The Wire, is usually like gets better adaptations than that. But yeah, I mean, I guess I won't like diverge further because it's how much of that has to do with you know Unforgiven, not much. But it's just kind of like, yeah, I remember watching part of it on TV, just the end of it. Or not the end of it, but like a part of it, where they're by the campfire. And it's always that scene. And I'm just like, oh, I'm too tired. Like I can't watch this. And then I watched it with a dog I was taking care of, Sophie. I even posted it on Instagram. You can see one of my few posts. It's like watching Unforgiven with Sophie, or watching Clint with Sophie. Um, and I can't remember even if I finished it then afterwards, because again, it was one of those movies where I watched like 20 minutes of it and then years go by and I pick up where I left off and watch the next 20 minutes. But yeah, it's because it's an unengaging movie. Hate me if you want. But I'm moving on. Number 36, The King's Speech, another Harvey Weinstein produced movie. And this is like the year where basically it's a decent hit, but this is no, it's the second year where they add 10 movies. But I remember the nominees, it was like this and The Social Network. And people are like, what's the movie people are going to listen to and watch 10 years from now? It's going to be The Social Network. But like the Academy membership hadn't changed yet then. So, of course, the boring historical British movie gets picked. And afterwards, Harvey Weinstein won again for The Artist, a movie which did not make this list because I made it halfway through that movie to the literal turning point where one's going down the stairs and another character is going up the stairs to indicate their diverging careers. And I don't know if I said F this or I was too bored or something, but I didn't finish it. So The Artist is not on this list, the silent black and white movie from 2011. But like, listen to the nominees from 2010, okay? see if you remember any of them. And like pretty much all of them are referenced. And even though the King's Speech was like a monster hit, like when I tell you the King's Speech, the amount of money it made like close to 150 million domestically and 427 million worldwide. That's like more than the last Harry Potter movie made. That's more than Uncharted made. Like it was a big fat hit. Yeah. It was a giant, big titted hit because it only cost like 15 million. And it won Colin Firth his Oscar. Yeah. Um, the yeah, I don't know why there has to be a whole section on Wikipedia on the depiction of stuttering when it's all like positive stuff. Like, give me the scandals. Like, all I care about is the scandal. But yeah, won Best Picture. It won Best Director, which kind of hurts because, like, um, yeah, like David Fincher was nominated for The Social Network that year. So it was like Tom Hooper, The King's Speech wins. Darren Aronofsky, Black Swan nominated. Probably one of Aronofsky's best movies. He also did The Whale, The Wrestler, The Fountain, Pi. Um, uh, so like a lot of edgy stuff. He also did Noah, which I mean, and Mother. So take from that what you will. But he's an artist, more so than Tom Hooper is, in my opinion. And then you have the Coen Brothers for True Grit, one of their few movies I really full stop like, aside from Inside Llewyn Davis. That's a good movie. David O. Russell, The Fighter, which is like picked up a passion project from Mark Wahlberg and delivered something good. It's probably one of David O. Russell's most coherent movies and began a comeback for him. I saw that in True Grit on Christmas Day. So it's like, if you were to look at these movies, like movies that only a few people could have directed, True Grit, it does have a signature style to it and it's great, but it's a remake, so that kind of gets disqualified. But they wanted to nominate the Coen brothers, so um, Darren Aronofsky, only he could have done Black Swan. David Fincher, only he could have done The Social Network. And The Fighter has some of David O. Russell's style, and that's kind of like the social drama of the group, because you always have like a historical drama, a social drama, kind of new, edgy, experimental film that like really works. A movie by like an old master, and then a movie by an up and comer who's been nominated a few times. So those all fit, and they give it to the boring historical movie because that's just how the Oscars are. But the nominees for Best Picture were, I kid you not, 10 all pretty good movies. The King's Speech, Black Swan, The Fighter, Inception, The Kids Are All Right, 127 Hours, The Social Network, Toy Story 3, True Grit, and Winter's Bone, which like nobody has heard of, but it's such a minimal, like small indie movie that launched Jennifer Lawrence. It's like kind of really impressive that like this $2 million movie came out and was a hit, because it, I guess, shows the importance of critics or something like that. But yeah, King's Speech, boring, historical. I liked it enough. Would I watch it again? No. Um, did it emotionally affect me? Not a whole lot, although the climax is pretty satisfying, but afterwards you're like, oh, that was it. That was the speech. So, yeah. Number 35, Million Dollar Baby. Um, this movie was very emotionally affecting, has an incredible, like, twist to it, good performances and characters. It's a movie you watch once and you will never need to see it again, ever. Has a few good scenes in it. Morgan Freeman just walks up and knocks the shit out of a guy, like just lays him out. And that was enough for Morgan Freeman to win supporting actor because the Academy was like, shit, we haven't given Morgan Freeman an Academy Award yet. So, um, yeah. Um, Morgan. He kind of, the thing with Morgan Freeman is that he was kind of canceled because he was like, like accused by like two separate women of being like, like gross or creepy, and then like this, one of them was a reporter, and she acts like she has this big smoking gun of like, watch this clip and you'll see, and then you watch it and you can't like tell Like, even with the notion planted in your brain, incepted in your brain, you're kind of like, uh, okay. And then there was another one which was more, way more damning. And it was just kind of like him trying to, be look up a girl's skirt or something like this. It's all hearsay completely. But like him doing that or making old comments, which you would expect an old man, just some of them to make because they don't like care anymore. And Alan Arkin apparently told him to stop it. And it's just kind of like, well, that changes who I think of Morgan Freeman as, and stuff. But it didn't. It didn't really affect his career. Like, granted, huge he hasn't been in a huge movie since like after he won his. So that was around 2017. He has not been in a theatrical movie that was released in theaters a whole lot since. Um, he was in the Zach Braff movie Good Person last year. My mom watched that, said it was okay. He was in, he's done a lot of straight to video movies. He was in as well The Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard, which is ugh, not great. And then he was the president in Angel Has Fallen. That was like a better than expected movie. And then Nutcracker in the Four Realms. But like none of those movies are like proper hits. You have like a sequel to a hit. You have a movie that's like a sequel to a hit and did better than expected and okay, but they're gone are the ones where he's doing any heavy lifting, which is why he was in A Good Person, basically. So I mean, we'll see with what he does next. He's successfully pivoted to TV. Like he was in Special Ops Lioness, which had like Nicole Kidman and a couple other good actors in it. So that was fine, and he'll do fine. Like he does a lot of voice work, he has a lot of residuals, he'll do fine. But his legacy is really only stained for like somebody like me or people who, like were reading the news at the time. If you remember in 2017, it was like every single week. It's like this person's a scab, this person's scandalous, this person's a creep, and it's like every week there was somebody, and like every week there'd be a debate. It was like hell of a time. October 2017. That's when Kevin Spacey went and never came back. Coining the term cancel culture. It's amazing how people still talk about that. Now it's become more of a social media thing, and people throw the words around like toxic environment. But yeah, wasn't as toxic as the old days. Not that I'm being nostalgic, but it's like funny, I guess, just because the people who complain about toxicity now the most and stuff, the people who complain about workplaces being toxic the most when they report on it are kind of come across as wimps. But then the people who complain about cancel culture and talk about themselves being canceled specifically, because everybody talks about cancel culture and it gets thrown around. But the people who are like, "Oh, I've been canceled," and it's like, no, asshole. It's just like accountability, really. Like Bill Murray is like, yeah, I told a bad joke. I thought I was funny. I wasn't. It's like, yeah, a bad joke you told once on maybe 10 occasions, Uh, it's just kind of funny because you really only hear about it if somebody is famous. So I don't know. That's why I find some of this cancel culture stuff, because it's always like the richest, most out of touch people complaining about it. It's like, oh, somebody didn't like what I said, and I'm used to getting everything my way. So yeah, $1 Million Baby. Moving on, number 34 is another movie I saw recently. And to be fair, I keep thinking I saw a movie recently if I saw it like post pandemic, which is now over a stretch of 4 years. But Marty, I swear I saw it like within the last year. It is the shortest Best Picture winner. It's about a guy in his 30s who lives at home with his mom and is kind of a loser. So obviously, I related to it a whole bunch. Um, and I got a TikTok out of it that did suitably well, I think. Um, yeah.
it was remade actually into a movie with John Candy and Ali Sheedy called Only the Lonely. Amazingly, I watched Only the Lonely, which was directed by Christopher Columbus and written by John Hughes. I did not detect that Marty was like the original version of that. But yeah, it's just about a guy who is kind of a schmuck, I guess if I'm using that term right, and just kind of walks around. Is he going to go to the dance, or is he going to, you know, be alone the rest of his life and live with his mom and stuff? This is a short and like sweet movie. I watched it on Tubi because it's like, oh, it's a 90-minute movie. I'll watch this, you know. The director has like a cool name, like Delbert Mann. Um, uh, the the top review by Sam Meltzer, who I follow on Letterboxd, said, "I love movies where the filmmakers aren't trying to impress the viewer, but rather engage the viewer and make them feel like they are at the same level as the movie." Marty perfectly exemplifies human interaction and relationships in a very realistic way, so much so that 60 years later I can still relate to it. And you know what? I agree 100%. I was surprised how much of Marty I saw in me. uh, top recent review just from some guy. Marty isn't gonna take it no more. 4.5 stars. My review. I'm amazed a film so simplistic did so well. I was reminded of the film through TikTok, and it struck me how relevant it remains today as a portrait of single adulthood. I enjoyed its modesty. Well, Will, you said it best, didn't you? Really, it should be higher than The Apartment, which is number 33. Kind of an overrated movie, just basically about amazing production design of that complex where these two people work. The Apartment is basically about this skeezy guy played by Jack Lemmon who rents his apartment out to his bosses so that they can take like their secretaries there away from their wives and hide there. And that all changes when he discovers that this girl who works in the building, played by Shirley MacLaine, who I mentioned earlier, if you're wondering why she was a legend, she already won an Oscar later on. So, um, yeah, it all changes when she, who is just a regular kind of girl next door, uh, shows up on the list, and she's like sort of a friend of his. So yeah, um, she is a six-time Academy Award nominee. She won Best Actress for Terms of Endearment. Oh, that was it, eh? Yeah, and then she was just nominated. Or is this just a really terrible because I switched, for those of you on the podcast, I switched downstairs from upstairs to downstairs so I could read better. Also, my father went to bed. So I came downstairs onto my computer where I can have more tabs open. So I didn't have the same tabs open, so I didn't know where I was. Um, and so, yeah, Shirley MacLaine only won one Oscar. Huh. And it was for Terms. Well, that's why she won it, because it was later in life. But you would think that she won more just because she's in one movie from the 80s that's like iconic in terms of endearment. And then she's in The Apartment, which again is like one of the, what people would call a scathing portrait of the rich or something. It's like, no, it's about like rich people who are assholes, and then the people on the bottom who are pushed at the bottom to be more desperate and take. But it's like it's an okay movie. It's very watchable. Didn't feel very long when I saw it way back when. Um, so yeah, and it's like a movie from the 1960s. So considering it holds up, you know. Yeah, I mean it's regarded as one of the greatest films ever made. Is it? No. Even though it appears on the AFI and Sight and Sound, which is like the British high end magazine of like these are the best movies, and then they name like 20 movies you've never heard of, but most of them are like very skillfully or inventively made. um, it's in the U.S. Library of Congress National Film Registry. It's 2 hours and 5 minutes. It moves along pretty well. It's directed and co-written by Billy Wilder. um, Billy Wilder, by the way, always reminds me of Gene Wilder, like when he says it. This movie, by the way, is on IMDb's top 100. It is rated 101, and it won, of course, Best Picture, Best Director, Best Original Screenplay, all three of which were by Billy, and also won Art Direction and Set Decoration in black and white, which, as I said, that was the first thing that I mentioned unprompted of like this movie, the way they do the building looks amazing. So watch it if you're, if you have time, I guess. But yeah, Billy Wilder, who had a hard time finding work later on in his career. He came to Steven Spielberg begging him to do Schindler's List. He's like, I haven't gotten a movie made. I'm so destitute. I'm done. And it's so sad because it was a guy that Spielberg had looked up to who's coming to him. And he's like, oh, I finally found you and you have the rights to Schindler's List. Please let me make it. I have to make it. It's my story. As a Jewish person, Steven Spielberg was like, "I'm sorry, I don't know what to tell you. We're going to we're going out to shoot next week. I can't, you know." But yeah, Billy Wilder won 3 Academy Awards for that, and then he also did Some Like It Hot, which is a very efficient movie about 2 guys who witness the St. Valentine's Day massacre, and then they go on the run, dressing in drag with Marilyn Monroe, and it's an okay movie. So like that movie's really well edited, really fast paced. So I love fast paced movies. He also wrote the screenplay for Sunset Boulevard, which I like, and my parents do not because they saw it on Broadway, paid a lot of money for the tickets, and scrammed halfway through because it was so boring. I have no doubt that as a stage play it was boring because all stage plays are kind of boring. Let's be real, except for the really cool talkie dramas. But Sunset Boulevard was this is a 1951 movie. Guess I'm gonna drag myself through it. No, it's a pretty well done movie. And then this guy also did The Lost Weekend, which is a movie I hear a lot about, or maybe I get confused because there's The Lost Weekend and then The Weekend and then The Low Weekend, and I guess they're all some degree of well regarded. But yeah, he won Best Director for that, and Best Screenplay for that. So, he just can't stop winning. And that's the end of his nominations of movies that you would know about that he won. But he also did Double Indemnity, which he's like highly regarded for. And then he also wrote a movie in 1940 called Ninotchka. He is one of those, if you're a cinephile or want to be a cinephile, you pretty much like clear his resume. But again, for people who like worked a whole lot in the 40s, it's like they made a lot of movies because the studio really churned it out back then. Because it's like, let me just count here: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 Academy Award nominations that this guy had. So yeah, that's something. Let me just see here, because I'm trying to think. I still, like, we're in the 30s, and I still haven't figured out, like, what formula to recite of, like, this, and then this, and then this, and then this. Yeah. Just giving you a taste of some of the dialogue from The Apartment, which is very snappy. It's like, the mirror, it's broken. Yes, I know. I like it that way. Makes me look the way I feel. And then, because, it's a movie about, co-workers who have sex illicitly. The number one most popular review is like, now I know what I got to do to get a promotion at work. You did good, movie, advice-wise. And then the second one is like, Buddy Boy needs a union. Yeah, when people are doing things that aren't above board, yeah. It's a Jack Lemmon sadly pulling a limp spaghetti noodle off a tennis racket kind of mood today, friends. Okay, it was too specific for me. Yeah. Somebody said far too long. Well, to be fair, I remember being interrupted where I started it like downstairs and then finished it up. So anytime where you change positions to watch a movie on a different TV, yeah, never did it. All I said was 4 stars, solid, well written, and relevant. Yeah. I hate not being able to remember what I wrote. I always feel because I wrote something, I should remember it, but it's like a weird thing. Number 32 might surprise you. It's Gone with the Wind. This was one of the early movies I saw as a kid where it was like, considered one of the greatest movies of all time. And I have to say, um, I liked it. I gave it 4.5 stars. And that's because the sweep of this movie is epic. Um, yeah, sorry, I had a tag in the back of my shirt that was scratching me. Um, yeah, and I haven't, especially as a kid, most of the movies I watched about guys, mainly white guys. This was like probably one of the first movies I saw where it's like fully about a woman, but doesn't feel woke, as they would say. Man, like people have really like thrown that around, particularly on Twitter. I saw somebody posted about the Kingpin from the Spider-Man, Daredevil, movies, and it was a picture of Michael Clark Duncan, who was like an inspired casting choice. And they're like, MFs today would call this woke. And I'm like, you know what? That's true. People just basically now mean woke for anything that isn't like white male. And there are people who are just like throwing it around because they haven't figured out or know what racism is. But, anyways, this movie is, I'm trying to think, like, I'm trying to do the math, almost 4 hours long. It's 3 hours and like 53 minutes. It also annoyingly has like an intermission, like on the DVD, and it also has like, a prologue and an epilogue. So, you know, it's like get rid of that and stuff. It's amazing that there was a controversy a few years ago because people were like, "Oh, what are they gonna do? They're gonna edit history and stuff like that because the movie is racist." Like, a buddy of mine, also a guest on the podcast, Vu, mentioned it's like, man, it is odd that the Hattie McDaniel character, who's the mammy maid character and stuff, is so happy and eager to serve. It was just like unsettling to see. And it's like I get that, and I get people who want to throw that movie in the trash now, but just the sweep of it, like the producer of this movie, like fired and hired like 3 directors to get this movie made before Victor Fleming ended up making it. By the way, based on a book by Margaret Mitchell. I imagine it will get remade just because we're coming up. It's 85 years now. It holds up really well. It's in Technicolor. They painted the celluloid, like they painted the frames, like retroactively, like shot in black and white, and then physically colored in afterwards. And has one of the greatest lines, "Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn." So those transatlantic accents. Um, yeah, it's just big film, epic sweep. It's one of the first movies where it's like we're spending all of the money on this. So yeah, um, I like it. Um, it's it has sweep as a good female character. The main guy is a straight up like asshole. I don't get why women like him. Rhett Butler, played by Clark Gable. It's like, yeah, Clark Gable is extremely handsome, but it's like you want to talk about toxic relationships. Like, why would you um, go with a guy who like threw you down the stairs? I kid you not. That's not a plot in the movie. And he like leaves her at the end because he's tired of it, and like she wants to go after him, and it's like, bruh, that is toxic stuff. Uh, you know, so toxicity isn't something new. I guess that's the thing. But if you could guess how many Oscars Gone with the Wind won, how many would you say? I always remember it because it's one below Titanic. Yes, this movie won. Well, it's only listed as 8, so it won Best Actress, of course, because Best Supporting Actress, the first Black woman to ever win an Academy Award in any category. One, you can actually see her like ceremony. It was like televised, and it's only like a minute and a half long speech. They kept her in the very back, and she came up and won. But yeah, best director, best screenplay. Um, Sidney Howard became the first person to die and then win an Academy Award after. He's the first posthumous Oscar nominee and winner. Best cinematography, color. Again, some of the images they hold up, they're dated, obviously, but they're put in with so much care that it's like the fire or the shot of the people in the train station at the end lying down because it takes place during the South in the Civil War, and they show pan out with a massive shot and show people injured, and they actually like folded, people like they copied and pasted in different parts of the frame and like mirrored it so that they could fill up the whole shot. And that was the first time where I looked at it. I'm like, I wonder if everybody in this shot is dead. Well, Olivia de Havilland, who's in that movie, only recently died. So maybe there's a chance that somebody is still alive. But as a kid, I thought they were all dead because that movie was from like 1939. But here we are in 2024, and maybe there's somebody still around. I don't know. Somebody do the research. Best art direction, best film editing. Again, it's funny to me that like when you look at some of the short films, like movies used to be like really short. They were like serials that played like you'd go to the movie theater and there'd be like a bit of a newsreel, and then there'd be like a B feature of like a comedy, and then a short film, and then it was like a double feature. And this movie, which is by the way the highest grossing movie um, of all time adjusted for inflation, no movie will beat it. Um, yeah, because it was re-released like 10 million times as well. But yeah, it made like 198 million in today's money. Just to let you know how insane that is. It made 198 million in today's money in 1939. So just to let you know how insane that is. We have it on DVD here. Yeah, if you were to adjust for inflation, this movie made 1.8 billion dollars. Yeah. Yeah, so it's an achievement, and I know that like it's problematic and blah 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 now, and that's why they added the warning to before the movie, but yeah, you cannot deny its sweep, as they say. So yeah. Anyway, let me move on. Let me see though if they have any fun tidbits that I missed. No, they don't. Okay, so number 31 is Oppenheimer. I've discussed this at length. Yeah, I knew it was going to change. I gave it 2.5 stars. That seems very low, but then it's one of those movies, particular with Christopher Nolan, where it's like, wow, you like forget it and remember it as you're watching it. So it's like, oh yeah, this scene. Oh yeah, this scene. Oh yeah, this scene. And you're waiting for the next part, and you forget how the entire third hour is boring. Like I rewatched it once since seeing it in theaters on opening night, which by the way was electric when the Trinity test happens, and I could see everybody on the edge of their seats, and then and I'm like, wow, what a good movie. And then it goes on for another hour, and the energy in the room was just hugely deflated. But it kept winning, and people kept talking about it. So yeah. Top most popular reviews watching this after I just watched Barbie call me Atomic Blonde. Josh Peck goes nuclear. In brackets, not clickbait. Was not expecting Cillian Murphy to get Sloppenheimer in IMAX. Yeah. Uh, did I write my whole review in here? Yes, I did, and it got to like some. I've long thought about should I just copy and paste from my website my reviews into Letterboxd to get more to to get more clout. Would that work? Um, oh wow, look at this. 999 films that I've rated on Letterboxd now, having finally watched Beau is Afraid. Um, so then my next film is going to be 100. And yet I only have 323 followers. What do I need to do, people? Yeah. So, anyway, Oppenheimer is 31. I like 2/3 of it. 2/3 of it are amazing. The final third is like, okay, we're getting what this guy's security clearance, but it's not a court case. But he already made the bomb, so what else is he gonna do with the security clearance? Oh, his reputation is being ruined by some guy in a stuffy suit. And it's like, well, he already made the bomb, and we're watching a movie about his life, so obviously his reputation is intact. So, what are we doing here? The answer is we're moving on to number 30, Gladiator. This movie's solid action picture. Has a lot of good set pieces, so it holds up well. Have it on DVD. That's how I watched it. Solid film. Looking forward to the second one, which, by the way, has a crazy budget of $310 million when it was only cleared for half of that. The reason that is because they are using live rhinoceroses. I hear live sharks and stuff. And when I heard that, I'm like, oh shoot, that's awesome. Like, PETA complained a whole lot about this movie, which they always do anytime animals are involved. This is Gladiator 2. So even though the writing is from David Scarpa, who wrote Napoleon, which had a dreadful, awful screenplay, and he wrote All the Money in the World, which had an awful screenplay, I remain optimistic. Solid film. Nothing I can say about it here will really change your mind. It's weird that it won Best Picture, and Ridley Scott has never won Best Director, and he does about one good movie every decade, having done 70s he did Alien, 80s he did Blade Runner, which I don't consider great, but everybody else does. 90s he did Thelma and Louise. The 2000s, he did American Gangster and Black Hawk Down. Most people would consider Gladiator. 2010s he did The Martian, and then in 2020s he did The Last Duel. Yeah, I mean, he did just do Napoleon, which was a heavy miss. Like, holy crap, a boring movie. Why was this made? But yeah, I look forward to Gladiator 2. It's a long time coming. Okay, Godfather Part 2, followed by Godfather Part 1. Again, that should be switched around because I like Godfather 2 better than Part 1. I find them both boring. There, I said it. It's just when you're growing up and you're told that this movie is great, nothing can come to that. And I just watched it too young. I was 10 or 12. I wasn't scarred by it, although that one scene where the guy gets shot through the eye while wearing glasses, I was kind of bothered because the blood looked like, a ketchup bottle and stuff coming out. But yeah, I thought that Al Pacino was unrecognizable and incredible. I'd never seen him that young. I didn't even know actors could be young at the age that they were at. Like, I saw Al Pacino as an old person. It's like, oh, he's always gonna be old. I didn't know that old people were young. It was like I was that young, at least acting terms. Or maybe I wasn't. Or maybe I was just stupid. Who knows? But yeah, Godfather Part 2, I like better than Part 1, but you always pair them together. They're great. I mean, I've learned from them in cinema class and stuff like that. It's just, I don't like the overall aesthetic about crime pictures. I don't find them rootable, and just the way that the undynamic camera movements and stuff like that. It's stilted. Everybody sits around and talks a lot. We all know it now because the stuff gets quoted to you, and of course, Marlon Brando is great, but yeah, 28, blasphemous, especially considering I put Shape of Water at 27. Yes, the fish effing movie. I put that at 27. I watched this, thought it was okay. I saw it in theaters, and I watched it with my parents, and my parents were all like, well, I guess if it's going to win, yeah, sure, that. Um, and then watching it on TV, I'm like, this movie kind of rocks. Like, everything fits together. The score, the editing, it's the most expensive looking $20 million movie that you've seen. One of Guillermo del Toro's best, although not as good as Pan's Labyrinth, which again wasn't going to win Best Picture because it's foreign language. Didn't happen until Parasite, which is coming up hot on this list. But yeah, it's just a solid rewatchable movie, and I balance that against Lawrence of Arabia, number 26, which I find it funny because when Steven Spielberg saw it as a kid, he's like, "Oh my gosh, how could I make a movie this great? I'll never be that great." I wanted to give up directing. When I saw this, again as a kid, around the same time I saw the Godfather movies, I'm like, this movie's easy to make. They just like friggin' shot the desert. Like, ooh, here's a picture of the desert. How grand, you know? That's all you literally have to do. All you have to do is bring a camera. Like, I didn't know about film and stuff like that. And now I don't have to because they shoot on digital, and I literally could just walk out to the desert and like get a similar quality. Of course, I wouldn't have the craftsmanship of David Lean and or the acting chops of like Peter O'Toole um, or Alec Guinness or all of that, but I don't need to. It's a movie that has its own. It won 7 Oscars. It has its own reputation. Nothing I say or do is going to do it. Only I saw it as a kid and thought hilarious. So I'm like, oh, that'd be easy to make. Unlike number 25, which I mistakenly saw backwards because I put in disc 2 first and it opened with the chariot race. I'm like, oh, this movie's going to be sick. And then I watched the second part and it's all the boring stuff mostly. And I'm like, crap. Like, I realized I watched it backwards. But then I remember in high school they showed us the clip, and it's just like nobody's doing it like this. They would not do this movie today because it's a chariot race that's done practically with real horses and no CGI. In the remake from like a few years ago, it's all CGI. And yeah, that movie cost $100 million and flopped heavily because they're like, oh, we're not remaking the Untouchable classic. It's more about the book. And then it turns out to be the exact same. But yeah, the way that when this movie came out and won 11 Oscars in 1959 is making use of a way that movies were filmed in that day that will never be replicated because they just could afford to like pour, um, oodles and oodles of money into this movie in a way that can't be replicated because there was no secondary market. It was just movies could play for years in theaters. So yeah, this movie cost $15.2 million in 1959. So I'm curious. Let me just do the math here. 15.2 million in 1959 today. Like, this is the 50s. Like, that would be... No, that can't be right. Okay, let me just see here. $161 million. Oh, okay. I sort of see that. Yeah, if it's properly spent. That's like near Dune money. So I get that. But even then, like, the movie feels bigger than Dune because it's biblical. But yeah, that set piece is so amazing. It single-handedly like sticks with you the whole set of films. So yeah, nobody will ever do it like that movie. Oh, and then it's the only movie aside from Titanic and Lord of the Rings to win 11 Oscars. So it's, again, part of the list of like The Godfather 1 and 2 and Lawrence of Arabia, where it's like I have to see this movie and Gone with the Wind because they're big, important movies. So I'll watch it. And then, yeah, I did, and I liked it. That's all I have to say about that. So, yeah, number 24 is Casablanca. This is an interesting movie because how do I put this? Hmm. I watched Casablanca the night before I went to high school, and I started to watch it, and then I stopped it. Yeah, and didn't finish it. And then the night before university, I watched it and finished it. It's a weird thing, I know, but that's just, I guess, how I felt. Yeah, it's uh, it's boring, but it's short, and I didn't relate to the love story a whole lot. I didn't um, think too much about it, and then I haven't entirely watched it again. I appreciated it. I liked how brisk it is. I didn't mind the love story. It's a kind of light, breezy, calm wartime movie. It was made in the early 1940s. And then I took movies in the music class in university. And what happened was after after doing that, uh, I saw they played the first hour of that, or the first 45 minutes or something like that. And it was like watching a different movie, even though I remembered it exactly as it was. Um, it was blissful. I saw the romanticism, the music was played correctly, and it hit all the notes correctly in order. So it's like I appreciated it of the highest value, and I'm sure when I watch it again, I'll like it a lot better. But I checked it off the list, and there's so many good movies to watch. And in fact, there's so many good movies, and this has taken me so long that I have to pause it right here because my battery is running low on my camera. So I'll have to upload this video separately later, and then the audio later. So I'll do this point right here, and it'll be, 100 to, or sorry, 50 to 24, and I'll do the other half later. So I'll see you tomorrow, I guess. And this has been the Film Gamer Podcast. We are now at, and it's annoying because I have to say it to end, and I'm doing this off the cuff. But yeah, this is season 3, episode 20, podcast number 27. So I'll be back with 28, and then I'll do probably 23 episodes. So then I can get to 30, and then maybe that'll end the season. We'll never know, but stay tuned. Take care. Bye bye then.